let's go ahead and get this first session started. Paul is coming to us from Singapore, so he had to record this because it's past Paul's bedtime. But once we get over with this session, then we'll have some reps coming in from Amatic that will be here to answer some Q&A. All right. So let's go ahead and get started here in just a second. Let's go and get Paul queued up. All right. All right, Paul. Super excited for you. Paul is the CEO. This is Paul Tenney of Amatic, CEO of Amatic. So super excited. Like I said, the title of this session is Breaking the Curse, How to Stop Being Haunted by Email Fatigue. Let's go ahead and get Paul in here, shall we?
All right. Thank you, Thomas. Everyone, nice to be with you today. I am based in Singapore, so if this were live, it'd be past 10 p.m., past my bedtime, hence why I'm recording this early. I'm actually recording this in December 2019, so I'm kind of curious what's going to happen in the world in the next year and a half. We'll find out, I guess. All right, so moving along. Today's topic, we're going to talk about how to stop being haunted by email fatigue, and I will get into what we mean by that in a fair amount of detail. So let me just move on and introduce myself. My name is Paul Tenney. I am from the United States originally, Seattle guy for anybody curious. I've been in the email marketing space since 2004, so I've got into my 18th year of email marketing at this point. My background, I was a Stanford grad, spent some time in the Valley after my college days, and then I moved out to Singapore in 2010. I've formed Ematic Solutions in 2013. We've today built 3 different business units. We've got a business unit, Ematic Solutions, which is focused on marketing technology. We also built our own technology under a banner called SubAI, and we've got a digital agency that we run across all of Southeast Asia, plus Hong Kong, Taiwan. So we're basically across all of Asia. Before I go into anything else, maybe just a bit of background. For those who've been around in the email space for a while, I came up with a company called YesMail, which I believe either no longer exists or has significantly evolved their business these days. But I spent most of my time in the US working with very large Fortune 500 type of companies. And a lot of that led me into a fairly deep dive into what we now call email fatigue. So let me move along into that topic for today. All right, so I think just as a bit of background, there's a phenomena that happens with email marketing that everybody's aware of, which is you see some loss in fidelity in your email marketing performance over time. A lot of times there's misplaced considerations here. So one of the main things people typically will try to solve for is things like unsubscribe rates. And for anybody who looks at the data, the unsubscribe rates for anybody who's moderately compliant with email marketing standards are absolutely tiny compared to the overall size of your database, and really make very little impact on the overall performance of your email marketing channel. What the much larger factor is email fatigue, and email fatigue is a real phenomena that is very measurable, and effectively has 2 sources. One is purely time. So from the day somebody subscribes, in fact, from the second somebody subscribes to email, if we take enough aggregate data, literally every second that ticks down going forward, you can expect slightly worse performance from that particular subscriber over time. Now, for any given subscriber, of course, that's not true, but in enough aggregate, the longer since the time of subscription, the lower the performance can be expected to be. The other factor is, of course, sending people emails, and particularly sending people unwanted emails, will drive more fatigue than if you're sending fewer emails to people. So there's sort of a double-edged sword there. And this is really what's behind some of the long-term declines people will see in open rates, click rates, and that sort of thing. So the topic for today is to dive a bit more into that and figure out what we can really do about that. Maybe just as a bit of background and to give some context to sort of how I arrived at making this a primary focus of my email marketing activities. When I was in the U.S., one of my larger clients was Macy's, and I still have these words ringing in my ear decades later. But my client kept coming up to me and saying, "Hey, why are our open rates going down? It must be a deliverability problem. There must be something wrong. Why are my open rates going down?" And I remember very specifically in December 2007. This was when Black Friday had really sort of started to become a big thing and that sort of thing. And they went absolutely nuts and started mailing 2 and 3 times a day to their entire subscriber base. I made a lot of money from that, which was great. And, I was happy for their charitable donations. They made a lot of money as well, right? So that's great. When we got to January, though, the open rates never recovered to their pre-holiday levels. And I could just see it going down consistently for several years after that. That was when I first kind of got a clue about what was behind all this. I also did a brief stint at Hotwire, which is a subsidiary of Expedia. I think they still exist. It's been a while since I was in the U.S. But basically, I was the email marketing manager, and the company at the time was sending 2 blasts a week. And my big hotshot idea was to send 3 blasts a week to see if we could get increases in performance, which of course we did. There was top line revenue increases, top line open increases, click increases. But it wasn't like it went up by 50%, right? So if we go from 2 mailings to 3 mailings, it's a 50% increase in campaign frequency, but it's not like we've got a 50% increase in top line results. And somewhere in there was a clue as well that there's another factor kicking in there, which is sort of like responsiveness fatigue or something of that nature. And so between sort of watching that over mailing pattern and what specifically happens when you increase the volume, that's sort of the origin of my journey. The last stop I'll talk about here briefly, when I first got out to Singapore, I was working with eBay in Southeast Asia, which covered off from Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines. And what you can see, especially think about demographics in Asia versus demographics in markets like the US. We've got a lot of people and we've got a lot less spending power than people do in the United States, which means you've got fairly large size lists. But the fatigue factor is exacerbated because, in part, there's not as much buying power behind every email that you send, right? So what we had started to play around with was the idea of limiting the email blasts to engaged audiences and active audiences, and then doing systematic reactivation of the less engaged or non-engaged users in the audience as a pure means of cost control. And what we can see is that the costs were so expensive of sending full blasts every single time that basically what it led to is they started to reduce their mailing frequency. And that's a disaster because what you're missing out in that case is getting in front of the new, interested, active, engaged users who will open, will click, and will go buy. And you're sacrificing the performance of those users because you're afraid of the spending costs on mailing to too many inactive users. So that's part of the email fatigue background. And let me jump into the rest of the slides. All right, so here, this is a chart. It's an actual live customer, but this was one of my favorite ones. It's stuck out of my brain because it was so perfectly orchestrated. This is an open rate, if you can see the metric in the upper right-hand corner there. And this is a month-by-month view over a 5-year period. And basically what you see is a very, very consistent pattern of open rates declining over time. Obviously, there's a little spike here. You can kind of see a spike here and a little spike over here, which is holiday time. And so you do get a pickup in engagement, but it's very clear overall long-term downtrend. And if we take data across our entire customer base of, I'm speaking in Ematic Solutions for a second. My company, Ematic Solutions, has about 400 customers. If we do aggregate data, the linear curve is almost perfect every single time, absent doing some fairly significant things about it. Now, in this particular case, this is the total opens, and I'm talking total unique opens on a monthly basis. You can see that the results are going up, right? So fine, we're getting declines in open rates, but the total numbers of opens are still going up. So what's the problem really, right? If we're still getting that increase? Well, the real problem is that the amount of send volume that you require to achieve those open rate increases is going up as fast or faster than your total opens are going up. Now you can apply this to clicks and conversions and everything else too. I usually select opens to show the concept just because it's a more consistent metric. You'll see with clicks, you'll get a little bit more variation, obviously with a smaller sample size, but also click rates decline faster than open rates. So it would have looked even more exacerbated. So the problem is sending costs money, and in different sorts of models, subscribers cost money, that sort of thing. But either way, what declining open rates, declining click rates mean is that your ROI is going down over time. Sure, you can still produce the top line results, but the dollar spent per top line result is reducing. So let's just get into a couple of quick concepts here. What's exciting to people about databases and customer databases is that we think about it like it's a piggy bank, right? So if I'm putting money in, some people might be old enough to remember when you could actually get interest from a savings account. But if you put money in, you're starting to accumulate an asset that can be used over time consistently and can grow without any loss in fidelity. The reality, though, is it's more like a leaky bucket. And so because of the fatigue factor, what's happening is you're losing engaged users every single second of the day because of time, if nothing else. So if you sat there and you didn't send any emails out to your audience at all, you're losing fidelity in your database, whether you mail them or not. If you're mailing heavily and you're mailing to a lot of people who don't want the emails, you're going to see that factor move up even faster. So you can build that bucket, but what's happening is you're fighting against a leak that's slipping out all the time. So let's get into what do we do about this. Some of this is obvious. Some of this is a bit contrarian. So number one is maximizing subscriber flow. So if we're going to try to get the bucket filled up and it's leaking all the time, the only thing to do is to turn the hose up faster and get more subscribers into the top. But what you can also see is that if we're saying that there's fatigue happening as a function of time, that what that means is that a new subscriber is better than an older subscriber every single time. So what you want to do is shift the dynamic as much as you possibly can towards new subscribers and away from old subscribers in order to get better performance as time goes along. The second thing, and this is where it gets a little bit contrarian, is everyone should do very regular email blasts targeted at their entire audience. So you don't need to necessarily mail to everybody in your entire audience, but pretend for a moment you're going to send to the entire customer database. You need to make sure there's a plan to get everybody mail. But what you are trying to do is make sure that those people who are in funnel, they're engaged, they're new, are getting email blasts from you regularly. My minimum recommendation for people in e-commerce would be 3 times a week. And there's several reasons for this. One is just to make sure you're using the data while you've got it. But the second piece is deliverability. And of course, the good news is if you run into some deliverability problems, a lot of those dynamic blocks reset after 24 to 72 hours. But also that's the same time window that you've got for reputation to maintain, right? So more frequent mailers get better reputation because they're consistent and they're sending a consistent amount of mailing volume regularly. So I actually encourage people to mail, and with the design of sort of my whole audience, more frequently than less frequently. That said, what you've got to do is give non-engaged users some time off. And what the effect there is what we call rehabilitation. And the idea is absence makes the heart grow fonder. If people aren't responding to your emails, give them some time off. Their propensity to engage with a future email will rise over time as you give them some time off. However, what you don't want to do is cut them off. And this is the biggest problem you see. So if anybody's ever had a deliverability problem, your friendly compliance officers probably tell you to remove anybody older than 12 months. You don't have to do that, and you will lose a lot of top line performance if you do that. However, it needs to be managed very, very carefully in order to make sure that you don't cause deliverability problems. The key answer is to trickle people in slowly over time who are not engaged with your emails versus cutting them off entirely. The last thing is hitting your high converting touch points. I am not a big fan of email marketing automation. It's very counterintuitive. I think in the most part, people spend more money creating journeys than they actually make money from them. However, I love things like abandoned cart emails, abandoned browse emails. I hate lapsed purchase emails because they are very low converting. But the value to me of an abandoned cart email is it allows you to pull conversions from that leaky bucket before they leak out without having to blast them 15 emails, because that's going to drive more fatigue and lower your open and click rates over time. So the real value to me of email marketing automations is reducing the dependency on your blast emails. All right, so let's look at some effects that we can drive with that. So here's that same company I was showing you before. And this was the point at which we left off. So this was our send volume, and it had been spiking up. Actually went all the way up to here. We started to implement those measures that I just mentioned, and we started to reduce the sending volume fairly dramatically. You can see it eventually flattens out here, and it will in the future start to increase again, but at a lower curve than previously. So by getting the send volume under control, we've taken care of that one piece of the ROI equation, which is lowering costs so that we're getting performance. Now, the key is, can we still drive good performance? So here's the open rates again, and you can see immediately as soon as we started to cut the right people out of the blasts and keep sending to the right people as well, an immediate uptick in open rates and a dramatic uptick in open rates ensued. Now that won't go all the way up to 100%. You'd not do very well that way. But you can immediately reverse that very long-term trend down back into an uptrend by mailing to the right people versus the wrong people. Now, what about the total performance? I'm going to show a little line here, but if you can't see it, the total number of opens continued to go up and continue to go up pretty much on the same curve as before. What you will notice here is the jump in performance for the first couple of months, where we got a lot more total number of opens. That's because of the rehabilitation effect. So when we gave users some time off and then started to mail them at a lower frequency, what we had happen is a bunch of those people started to respond who hadn't been responding before, and then eventually it went back to its same previous normal curve. So just to recap there, what we've done is say continue blasting emails that are designed to go to your entire database. We didn't change anything in terms of the campaign frequency. All we did was start to reduce frequency to users that are less engaged and do it programmatically, and remember to bring them back for re-engagement attempts. Of course, this is not meant to be a sales pitch, but Ematic Solutions, and under our technology division, has built a plugin called HiIQ that is the outcome of about 10 years of my research into the email fatigue subject. That allows us to model very specifically what people can expect from a fatigue curve and address it systematically with a very simple and easy to use plugin. And by the way, our business model on this is nobody ever pays for it until it saves you money. So if anybody's interested in a trial of that, you can contact us later and take a look. All right, I hope that was useful, informative in my brief 20 minutes that I have. Since I'm on tape recording here, I'm going to pass it over to back to Thomas, and he is going to introduce a few of my colleagues to take any of your Q&A for the remainder of the session. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Super sweet. Heck yeah. Okay, so we got Paul's team coming on. We've got Dragan and Yelena coming in. Super excited to have them. All right, here we go, guys.
Hello, guys.
Guys. Oh, I'm loving the pitchfork. Heck yes. Loving. Oh man, now we got to make sure you guys come back next year so we can definitely have this awesome.
We love your costume too.
Thank you. Right? Yeah, I decided to do a change in the middle, so I was like, you know what? It's the last day email camp. Why not pull out all the stops, right? Awesome, guys. Well, do you guys want to give a quick intro of yourselves before we get started here, and then we can dive into these questions?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I'd like to thank Paul for giving such a good presentation. Email fatigue really is scary. So I'm Dragan, and next to me is my colleague Jelena. We've been working at Ematic for a number of years now. What I do is, my background is basically engineering, but these days what I do is manage our customer success and customer success engineering teams here. We're based in Bosnia, by the way. So here in Bosnia, and what we do is manage our teams, manage our customers here, basically in the European part of the world. Next to me is Jelena, and she's a team lead for our customer success team here. So I guess, Thomas, we can move on with the questions if you want.
Cool. Awesome. Guys, and everyone, all of our viewers, just to let you know, remember, don't forget to upvote your questions so we can make sure we get all of them answered, because Dragan and Jelena only have so much time with us. So we got to make sure we get all these answered. All right, guys? All right, cool. So the first one comes in from, all right, let's see. All right. So the first one that we got is, what would you suggest as a good method to reactivate the less engaged contacts?
Yeah, so I think part of this question was already answered in Paul's presentation. It was asked early in the presentation, but basically one of the methodologies we use here and what's part of one of our products is the part where Paul mentioned that absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? Mm-hmm. So what we basically do is identify how engaged or disengaged contacts are, and based on that, we give them consecutively higher periods of non-mailing, right? Mm-hmm. So if somebody's consistently not opening your messages, we give them a period of a break to not get any messages, and then we try to send them a message, right? Mm-hmm. Once we send them a message, and then we check again if they engaged, if they opened and clicked. Mm-hmm. If they didn't engage again, what we do is widen that period of how much time do they not get another message, right? So from that perspective, for example, what one of our technology products, HiIQ, does is basically identify what mailing frequency should you email your email database on an individual subscriber level, right? So the less engaged somebody is, less often they'll receive your emails. And the more engaged somebody is, more often they'll receive emails. And I think it's a pretty good methodology, basically, to re-engage your audience, because data has shown that when you give your contacts who don't regularly open a period to take a break for your emails and then attempt to email them again, some of them are more likely to open your emails. Now, obviously, aside from using this purely data-driven approach, right, what you can also do is, of course, over time, you can identify some of your extremely non-engaged users, right? And then there are some content strategies to use to try to re-engage those users. And I think those are pretty familiar with your audience, right? Basically offering them something in return to open your email, right? Discounts, coupon codes, and stuff like that is always a good method to try and attempt to re-engage less engaged audience.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Cool. Okay. Moving on.
Besides that, it impacts your deliverability and the overall performance. Also, it can impact and increase your ROI, which is the most important thing for everyone who is doing e-commerce.
Right, exactly. ROI it's all of our boss's favorite words, right? What's the ROI on that? What's the ROI on that? Yeah. Oh, love that return of investment. Oh man. Okay, let's move on here. Okay, This one comes in from Whitney. She's asking, with MPP open rates are less reliable, so how would you gauge an engaged subscriber versus an unengaged by just relying on click-through rates?
By MPP open rates, I think you're referring to Apple's new changes, right, for the open tracking.
Most likely, yeah.
Yep. So like this, right? So the methodology we use to identify in our technology engaged versus non-engaged users, we use a number of variables, right? Such as how long ago did somebody open your email? How long ago did somebody click your email? How long ago did somebody purchase through your email? And a number of your different variables that you track, right? So basically, one methodology you can use is it's basically tracking events, right? And assigning values to them. So what we do is segment out Apple email audiences and then devalue the open event as an engagement metric. So basically, our algorithms and our technology can apply different engagement metrics to different users. And one differentiation we can do is basically differentiate. If it's an Apple email, then a click is worth way more than an open because of the known reasons and their changes. So again, to reiterate on my previous point, what we do is basically look at all these metrics and apply these methodologies on an individual subscriber level. And I think that's the key thing to do it properly.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, let me see. Moving on here. Looks like we got one from Brian. Brian's asking, when does the less engaged segment become inactive, and would you consider unsubscribing them?
Okay. Yep. So this again ties to what we do with some of our technology, and basically what one of our products does is this. It can identify kind of three different buckets of your users, right? One is identified engaged users who are, we always suggest you always mail, right? Because they drive most of the value. Then there's disengaged users, where we go and apply an algorithm to them, which I talked about just now, which is basically the less engaged somebody is, the less often they'll receive the emails. They'll get consecutively bigger breaks in an attempt to reactivate them and get them to open again. And then the last thing we do as a means of providing cost savings for email as part of our technology is identify extremely disengaged audience, right? So these are basically people that never open your emails, never click your emails, and don't do it consistently, right? And for that audience, what we do is something along the lines of, okay, we'll deactivate them and we'll give them a very long periods of non-mailing in an effort to, for them basically to not count towards your email channel costs, right? Now, that doesn't mean we throw them away forever, since even the most non-engaged database can bring you some top-line revenue. If you have like 100,000 extremely disengaged users, if just one of them opens your emails and purchases a high-value product, you'll get something out of it, right? So we apply that methodology of identifying the third bucket that's extremely non-engaged. We deactivate them from DSP. We don't mail them at all. And then on occasion, we try to bring some of them back, trickle some of them back, mail them, and see if they drive any value. Now, as far as the question goes, when does the less engaged segment become inactive, and would you consider unsubscribing them? One answer is depending on which ESP you're using. Yes, we're sometimes unsubscribing it, sometimes deactivating it. And as far as when does the less engaged segment become inactive, that's basically the way our tech works. That's configurable, right? So what you can do is basically kind of have a slider, right? How aggressive do you want to apply the algorithm to your database? If you go all the way, that means you want the highest ROI optimization, and then our metrics on when users are engaged versus non-engaged are really strict, right? So only your most engaged. And then the other part of the slider is most performance in terms of top-line revenue. So basically what that means is if you move the slider all the way to the left, you'll get the highest top-line revenue, right? Because if you're mailing everyone consistently, you're getting highest top-line revenue. If you're mailing the only extreme engaged users, then you're getting the highest ROI, paying the least amount of email channel costs, right? The key there is to find the sweet spots between, depending on what your marketing goals are, right? So I'd say it's we can configure it for each one of our clients if they use our tech, and it just depends what your marketing KPIs are, right?
Most definitely. Cool. That makes sense. All right. Let me see here. Moving on. Okay. Let's see. This one comes in from Julia. She said, great session, by the way. You mentioned people generally spend more money setting up marketing automation flows than what they make from it. What about using workflows to improve customer experience? Like reduce support tickets, make the most of a tool. Is it really worth it? What do you guys think?
Yeah. So I'm not sure what Julia means between differentiating marketing automation and workflows. Mostly in the ESP land, those are interchangeable terms, right? But I guess I don't have a really good answer to this. Depends what your goal are. I think what Paul meant in his presentation is people sometimes spend way more time building these complex user journeys with a lot of conditionals and where the user will go. And then when you take into consideration the amount of work hours spent on building and maintaining and optimizing these, changing them,
and creating templates as well.
Yeah, versus how much revenue they generate, you end up spending more time than you actually get out of them. Obviously, there's a smart way to do it. You just need to find which ones are worth implementing and tracking how much they're converting. So yeah, as far as reducing support tickets, I'm not sure what exactly Julia is referring there, but there definitely is some customer journeys you can implement if your customers are asking the same questions over and over again in certain situations. So if you identify some type of event where a user generally reaches out and asks you a question, then you can maybe track that event and send a user automation that'll answer it proactively, basically.
Gotcha. Okay. Looks like we got time for one more, guys. And Danielle wanted to know, should you repeat an abandoned cart reminder email? If so, how long should you wait from the initial email?
Yeah. So again, I don't really have a set answer for that one. It kind of depends, and a good way to do it is to check the metrics and A/B test, right? So what you could potentially do is set up a simple workflow where a user abandons the cart and then gets a follow-up email, right? You can see how much revenue does that follow-up email generate. You can send another follow-up email after the initial follow-up if they didn't purchase and see how much revenue does that one generate, right? You can also A/B test the time between two follow-ups, right? So, and play around with that thing. The thing with that is I wouldn't spend too much time trying to optimize that stuff for one simple reason. When doing A/B testing, it's not a thing you do once, get the result, decide that's the right option, and then move on it. It's an iterative process, right?
And you need to do it at least 10 times to have some results, valuable results.
And so one thing is it's an iterative process, right? And the other thing is to get good results on A/B testing, you need to have a minimally large data set for them to be valuable, right? So I think small to medium-sized companies spend way too much time A/B testing this stuff, trying to squeeze some results out of it without actually getting them, right? So I'd say you can focus on really complex A/B testing once you have enough big of a database size for those results to be statistically significant. Until that, I think going with simple solutions and just following the best practices and utilizing proper technology to manage your email engagement, mailing frequency, and such as some tech we do is a good way to handle that.
Gotcha. Awesome, guys. Well, man, that is all the time we have today for y'all's session. Yelena and Dragan, I appreciate you guys coming by and hanging out with us. Loving the pitchfork, loving the little creepy little skull guy that you got to see for a moment. I hope you guys have a fun Halloween weekend. Thank you guys for stopping by, and I hope we could do something together soon. All right.
By the way, who's your Cruella?
It's funny. So actually, I pulled my Dalmatian outfit out from last year. My Cruella actually is my fiance, but she's actually on our sales team. And I hope Yeah, and the funny thing is, y'all may have seen me get killed earlier by Jason Voorhees, and I hope I didn't disturb any of her sales calls that she was on earlier. So I'd like to give a shout out to my fiance. So I'm sorry, babe. But awesome,
Yeah.
guys.
By the way,
Oh.
so I just also want to thank you for inviting us to join the event. For everyone that we didn't get a chance to answer their questions, if they have any regarding the topic at hand or want to ping us about their own tech or anything, I'll leave my email in the chat. So if anyone here wants to follow up with their question, they can just reach out to me and I'd be happy to answer them.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here. I appreciate you guys so much. Yelena and Dragan, thank you so much. Guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks
all right?
so much.
Guys, see you later.
Bye.
Bye. Awesome. Okay.